So it's not for kids.
Tom, I got a theory about internet.
Theory about internet?
Here's my theory. When cold, internet bad. I think that the tubes freeze. Is that like wild to say? Because like it's like consistently at night. Like, is there like something? You know more about tech?
You might be on to something. I mean, it's not supposed to happen, but I think if the wires are in the ground and like, you know, and the ground is getting cold, maybe you're like living in a neighborhood that has like, you have a lot of people pulling on the internet at night in the winter earlier because like they're all live streaming and staying inside instead of hanging out late and barbecuing.
Everybody's up at like 3 a.m, just like torrenting.
Oh, you're talking
movies.
about like ultra late.
It starts around midnight and then it's like anytime I'll use the internet past that until the morning.
Well, that just might be your ISP's maintenance hours.
They use that time. They're like, nobody's on right now.
Yeah, nobody's online. Just one fucker.
Yeah, there's this dumb guy looking up the Wikipedia article for every Final Destination movie.
I thought maybe you're the Spiders George of the torrenting in the neighborhood. And
no.
You're like downloading 8,000 new movies every night at 2 a.m.
I don't download anything, honestly. Because like, I don't consume media anymore. I just sit there and stare at the wall. But like, no, but case in point, you know, I didn't want to watch the Final Destination movies because like I have better things to do with my life. But yet I sat there trying to load Wikipedia pages for all 6 movies and reading the synopsis for each one. And you know what? Spoilers, they all die. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I'm like, I wonder how this one plays out. And they're like, this person has a premonition about them dying, and then unfortunate circumstances happen and each one dies, and by the end they're all dead. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I should have seen that one coming, you know. I should have had a premonition about how that movie was gonna end. And so I go to the second one and I'm like, oh, maybe it'll be different this time. Maybe one person will survive. And they're like, yeah, and then 2 people survive. Just kidding, they die. It's just like,
my understanding of this series of films is like, and maybe you confirmed this by reading the Wikipedia, is like, it's like some dude with anxieties, intrusive thoughts, and he just was like, what if all of them happened? You know, he was like driving behind a log truck and he was just like, what if one of these logs fell out and killed me right now?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and he like wrote that down. He's like, write that down. That's like every single one of those movies.
Yeah, it's just like every paranoid thing that you're worried about just manifested.
I did actually have like a Final Destination type moment almost happen to me.
Oh no.
Like the log truck thing, it was like, it could have been that bad, but thankfully, as far as I could tell, like no serious damage was done. But some car like pulled out of a Taco Bell and had like full-size car tires in like a pickup bed. And they just like rolled out of the bed and bounced on the street. Like, if I'd been like a few meters farther up, it clearly would have hit like the car. I don't know if it could have killed anyone. I don't know if it was moving that fast, but I was like, sheesh, you know, talk about unsecured load.
That's wild. Well, I'm glad you survived.
Yeah.
So we could talk about board games.
Yeah, so we could do this.
If there is a God, they were like, not yet, Tom. You gotta shit on food chain and praise Monopoly a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. The world needs to know.
Welcome to Shelf Stable, a podcast celebrating board games that have stood the test of time. I'm your host, Kenny Katayama.
And I'm the other host, Tom Bowers. Today, featured topic is how to pick what you're gonna play. Probably the hardest decision to make in gaming. But before we talk about that, we'll talk about some of the things we've been playing recently.
Tom, I got to play Village from 2011. Mm-hmm. Took
Not
a whole
the
bunch
bees.
of people.
What's that? No, that's the Wicker Man, isn't it? Do I have the movies mixed up?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Oh, the twist. The twist is well, I don't want to spoil.
No, yeah, don't. That's like the only thing the movie has going for it. Is this big twist, right?
Okay. Anyway, some kind of reference to the movie The Village over here.
Board game has nothing to do with The Village, just for people who don't know.
Yeah. It's Inka and Markus brand, publisher Stronghold Games. This is a worker placement? Question mark? Game? Where you're running a medieval village. The reason I put a question mark is because you have workers, but you don't put them on spots. And then you have spots, but you don't put the work. It's still a worker placement. Basically, it's inverted almost. There's these resources that randomly get seeded onto the different spots, and you can keep taking that action as long as there are resource cubes there. Basically, you take a cube, take the action. So that's already kind of cool. The number of times you can do that is how many times there's cubes on it, and once it's gone, you can't do it anymore. But then you do have these little villagers. So you're like, why wouldn't you just put those on? Because those villagers go and enhance the worker spots. Basically, if you invest a worker into a spot, they optimize or provide you with access to certain things in that spot. So you can have somebody go into the capital or whatever, and then they influence the politics of the town. Or you can have somebody go into the church and they influence the clergy.
So it reminds me of Yokohama a little bit, but in a different way.
It's a little Yokohama. Yeah. It does have some similar DNA. So that's one of the cool things about it. The other central conceit is that you're basically living out time. So a lot of actions will take resources, or they'll take time, or sometimes they'll take both. And when you spend time, you go around your own personal time board, and every time you pass the bridge, one of your villagers, your workers, dies. And it has to be one from the first generation. So if you have kids, they get spawned in the second generation. They have like a little 2 on them. But if somebody dies, they have to be from the first generation. When you run out of people who have died in the first generation, you start to kill the second generation. I know this sounds a little morbid, and to be honest, it kind of is. But it also creates kind of a more humanistic feel to the game. Like, it's not just these cartoon characters that are running around doing arbitrary things. Like, your people have a lifespan to them, literally. And so I kind of like that. You can start to develop little stories, you know, you old ratchety Nick just churning out cows over here. We don't know how he does it, but Mama Judge over here is just working at the top of the government. Is never going to die. She's the first generation, but she's been there since the beginning, and everyone else in her generation is going to die first, and I'm going to make sure. There's these kind of fun little narratives that you can instill into your workers, or you can just play the game and not do that. It's kind of up to you. But I do like thematically how this whole generational system works, as well as like the manipulation of time. Because the first time you play, you're like, ooh, yeesh, I don't want to lose my person. I've invested in them. But when somebody dies, if they are like the first 3 of that particular profession, they get remembered in the book of history. And you get more points for every person that makes it into that book of memories, of histories. If you exceed the number of slots, then they just go into an unmarked grave, and you don't get points for them. So you kind of like want to kill your people. You want to like call dibs on death, which is interesting, I guess. It is kind of funny when you get into a bidding war with Kyle to try and like kill off your people fast enough.
I do say this concept of like workers with a lifespan, I don't know that has happened much, if ever. And I don't know if it serves that much of a purpose in general, unless you're like trying to drive home a theme of something like multi-generational. But it makes me think of like, because Terraforming Mars has a theme where every round is supposed to be a generation, but there's no like realistic, I guess, depiction of the sort of the many lifespans that would have to work to colonize Mars. If someone were to do a Terraforming Mars that wanted to more explore those humanistic themes and some of those realities of like a legacy that you don't necessarily even live to see the end of, right? That's a cool space to explore. I think more stuff could do a lot with that, especially in like kind of this new wake of gaming where people are, I think they're exploring more avant-garde themes, like, you know, creating very Lynchian games in a way. Sometimes. I
agree. I think there's a lot of space to be explored when it comes to like the ephemeral nature of things and time, manipulation of time. I don't mean like anachrony, you know, I'm talking like time passing in a way that feels meaningful. Not just like, oh, it's the next round, do your upkeep.
Right.
So all that said, I don't know that Village really does enough to stand out. Like I talked about the 2 main things that really make it shine and make it interesting. Everything else is kind of your traditional get resources, fulfill contracts, various different ways to get victory points. Having played Fromage since the last time I had played Village. It kind of feels like Fromage, except that Fromage takes a quarter of the time to play and still feels as fulfilling. And so I almost feel like Fromage killed this game for me. New game alert, I guess.
Oh, no. Fromage, the village killer, huh?
Maybe other people feel differently, but for me, they had similar vibes, but Fromage felt more concise, more elegant, and faster. So I'm not one of those people who's like, every worker placement, Euro resource is the same. Like I'll enjoy a game even if just like the theme is different, but somehow Village really felt like the Venn diagram was overlapping a little too hard.
Gotcha.
That was Village from 2011.
Okay, Kenny. Well, speaking of old-ass games from 2011, I was caught playing the Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy, designed infamously perhaps by Stefan Feld, published by Alea. This is an ultra-iconic game, I think. I think it's one of the most, like, board games of all time. You know what I mean? Like, if someone said, like, you know, board games for board gamers, there's Catan, and then there's, like, the Castles of Burgundy, I feel like is a close follow-up as something you could put on like the shelf of like a nerd in a movie, like, or like the background of Big Bang Theory, or they would be playing this on Big Bang Theory, and it'd be like,
it'd be like on the table.
Yeah, it's interesting in comparing it to Catan because it has like over a decade of separation between Catan and itself, and yet it has like the same kind of motifs in a sense, the same, like very similar sort of vibes. It doesn't really share a lot of characteristics with Catan, except for dice rolling and hexagons, you know? It's weird just, I guess, how much like its aesthetic is clearly influenced by Catan, but I'm sure by this point, you know, nearly everything was doing something to borrow from that legendary title. For those who have not played this, I recommend it. The interesting thing about it is that every turn you roll 2 dice, and those are like the 2 worker actions that you get to take. As I'm playing more and more of these games, Kenny, I'm realizing that like exactly 2 actions on a turn is exactly how many you should get. you know?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. It depends on the game, but yeah.
Like in general, it's just such a good feel. If it's like worker placement, if it's terraforming Mars, you know, even I think even 51st State, if we modified 51st State to have 2 actions per turn, that could be interesting.
I'd be down to try that.
But anyway, I digress with that. The thing that makes Castle Burgundy interesting is I think a lot of the same stuff that makes like Brass Lancashire, Brass Birmingham interesting, which is that you get these 2 actions per turn. There's a semi-random like input element. But you do get some number of ways to mitigate the randomness over the course of the game, and just a sort of a large number of branching directions for you to explore. This is not the type of game that I feel particularly strong in, but I'm never like not having a good time. There's always something kind of rewarding about puzzling through your turn and trying to set up your odds as best you can so that your next die roll can give you the best shot at grabbing the things you really want off the board, and trying to chain things together, you know, to make as many points as possible. There's just like so many almost like mini games sprinkled throughout this that you're constantly trying to keep track of, and yet it doesn't feel like overwhelming. It's breezy. It even at a 4-player count, it didn't overstay its welcome. It ran a little longer than I expected it to, but it still didn't feel like it was dragging at any point. And I think it's because it has that. It's generally pretty quick, the number of decisions you can make on your turn, and that you only get those 2 options. So this is a really great game. If you know people listening out there take anything from this, they really ought to check it out. I know you personally like to mention how this is Stefan Feld's best game.
His only good game.
Oh, okay, right.
That's how
a bit of a difference, yeah.
Yeah. I haven't played all of his games, so I don't know how confident I feel in that.
Well, I have yet to play a better Stefan Feld game myself, but to be fair, I've not gone particularly out of my way.
Yeah, I think like he got a little typecast for sure and leaned into what people enjoyed about his games. I would be curious if you made like a miniature battles game, you know?
Right.
That'd be a fun experiment. Stefan Feld designs the next 40K standalone board game published by Fantasy Flight or something.
Yeah, that'd be something. Just goes completely mass market.
Yeah, we need that Eric Lang, Stefan Feld's collaboration project with Simon.
I feel like you could tweet this, or like not tweet, but blue sky this at Eric Lang, and he might actually respond.
He'd be down. Stefan Feld might not.
I don't know.
But...
Yeah. You know, there was recently this Kickstarter Super Deluxe Ultra Edition of Castles of Burgundy. And playing this again kind of reconfirmed for me. I think I do really actually want like the $300 box version of this. I just think it would be so fun to get to pull it out. And because of it's a relatively light game, it's like easy-ish to teach. And I think the deluxe edition adds a lot to make it even easier to set up than it already is. It's a little bit fiddly wonky with like how many different colored face down tile stacks you have to like shuffle and randomize. The deluxe edition has like Velar bags for all the different tiles. Not even to mention that like the tiles are 3D and they have like player mats with like...
If you had that version, I would be down to play it, but if I owned it, it would probably be too intimidating. Somehow when things get a little too deluxe or when they get a little too big, I almost feel like, oh, I don't want to get that off the shelf anymore. This is probably some weird psychological block for me, but...
No, I think I totally see where you're coming from. Like it's almost like you bought the fancy wine, so now you can't pull it out until it's like your 50th anniversary. You know, you can't pull it out for an arbitrary Valentine's Day.
No, it's not even that. For me, it's just like, oh, this is too much work.
Well, yeah, that's what... well, okay, that too, yeah.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. It's like, it's literally like just too heavy to pull out.
Yeah. I just need to go to the gym more, I think.
Yeah, that might be the real answer. Anyway, that's Castles of Burgundy from 2011.
I got to play Hansa Teutonica from 2009. It's the sequel to Hansa Tonica. It's designed by Andreas Steding and published by Argentum Verlag. We've talked about Hansa before. This is a game where you got daddies and babies, and the daddies are harder to push than the babies. And apparently with this game of Hansa Teutonica, the name of the game is not even focusing on what the hell you're doing and just sticking your shit in places where people go, are you serious? We said, are you serious quite a bit during this game of Hansa. Basically, you have to complete a route, and then when you complete a route, you take an action that we dubbed the Schlump, which is when you take all the cubes from that route, and then you get a benefit. Either you get to place one of your cubes in a tower, which gives you more points when people complete that route in the future, or you unlock something on your board, either like more actions or more cubes refreshed when you refresh your bag, or the ability to move more cubes around the board that are already placed. There's all kinds of different benefits that you can get. This was like every game of Hansa, very mean and very interesting. It's like a no randomness game outside of the little plate bonus tiles that are on the board. So it's kind of fascinating that you kind of see these different ways of tackling the game each time. I completely went in a different direction. I focused on early on getting the move your pieces around the board benefit, while others were kind of wrestling over the action economy like people traditionally do. And so I was very behind at the beginning, but then when people realized they needed to go to that spot, I already had that real estate. And so they started, you know, basically allowing me to get more profit. And from there, I just kind of trolled everybody. Because I'm able to move my pieces around, even if I was placing them in places I didn't want just to troll people, I could later just move a bunch at the same time and take an actual area that I needed. And that let me shoot ahead and ultimately win the game. I still stand by that this is almost kind of like misplaced because of its frowny Euro dude on the cover. Like, this game doesn't play like Lorenzo Magnifico or like Marco Polo or like Kalis. It just happens to also have one of those frowny Euro dudes on the front. This is a much more fresh feeling game, very interactive, very confrontational. I enjoy it a lot. I've compared it to Brass. I stand by that. Still feels very Brass to me. And Tom feels very mid on it. I know that much.
Yeah, I wasn't blown away.
Well, to clarify, you didn't play this one. You were playing Castles at the same time.
I mean, like, I'd be willing to try this one again. I wasn't, like, instantly in love with it, but I did think it had its fun moments. It's interesting how interactive it is, how it can be kind of mean. In a way, like, meanness can kind of be a good thing in games, although it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, if people are overly mean to one player, you know, that person is going to be very soured on the game, and you risk, like, making them never want to play it again. And that's what this game, unfortunately, can kind of lead to. But if people are being reasonable and balanced and actively trying to make the best play for themselves and, you know, allow moves to screw over a more dominating player than pick on, like, someone who's just kind of tragically in the way, this game works out pretty well overall.
We had one player at the table that was like really excited about this game because you get to be mean. And then halfway through the game, they were like a little bummed. Part of it was because they weren't able to get their momentum. But on top of that, they were like, oh, I didn't realize that when you said you could be mean, that also meant people could be mean to me, you know? It was like a moment of realization, like, oh yeah, it goes both ways, huh? I don't think it's for everyone, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's Hansa Teutonica from 2009. I'm going to talk about a game that I played recently, although I'm going to admit right here that it was maybe a month ago. That's a Dream Home from 2016, designed by Klemens, Kalicki, and published by Rebel. Da Vinci? This was a game that I think I got it because it has this aesthetic that I figured would speak to my girlfriend and or some of the kids. I bought this like I think summer of last year, and then I finally got to play this January of this year, and I don't really know why it's been so slow to come out, other than I personally have gotten really apathetic about reading new rule books. And you know what it is, Kenny, that I think makes it hard for me to want to read new rule books?
What's that, Tom?
Vagueness in rule books. I think I saw someone on Blue Sky with a hot take that I weirdly enough, despite what I'm about to say, I think I generally agree with, which is like, ugh, why is this rule book so vague? I wish, you know, it just had explanations for every possible edge case. And then that's the tired take. The wired take is this rule book is intentionally vague so that I can, you know, establish the gameplay that I want to experience or something like that, you know? And I ought to keep that mindset in mind, because there are a lot of rule books that they explain their rules and then they say, like, have at it. And then you start getting into the game and it's like, wait a minute, what happens if I do this and this? Does it work the way I think it does? A lot of the time there is not, like, you know, a compendium.
In your defense, I think you can have both, even if in a family weight game. Like, you can have an appendix at the end that people don't have to read.
Right.
GMT does a really good, you know, famous family offerings. GMT does this pretty well, where they have like the core of the game. They have a bunch of things that are tied to different parts that are like subsections. And then they have a really good index or something at the end to reference so that you can go to the right section.
Yeah, GMT's rulebooks are a masterclass in, like, actually being able to lawyer your way to the correct answer. But I totally understand why most rulebooks don't do this anymore. This is getting, like, very tangential, but, like, you know, I'm going to stay in this space for a second here. It's just like, I think I would probably be happier if instead of looking up the answer on Board Game Geek forums, I went just, that seems like it ought to work that way, you know? And we just sort of agree as a group on what it ought to be. This should happen more with non-ultra gamers. With the ultra gamers, it's like the vibe. I think like the first vibe check is like, do we want to know what the official rule is, or do we want to just like come up with it right now? And I feel like in our group, most people would probably be like, let's look it up. I think just things would be so much smoother in life if I just could give up on that a little bit more. That's all I'm trying to say. But at the same time, like, I can't.
It depends on the rule too, though, because like I'm kind of with you. Like it's kind of nice to just have an official wording, but I think you're giving the family game a little bit too much slack. There have definitely been moments when something was so vague that we interpreted it one way and just did what you're suggesting, which is just come up with something on the spot. And then like way later in the game, we realize that we've been playing it wrong, and actually that's not the intended way of doing it.
Yeah. It's a fine line, I guess, between like a bad rule book and a rule book that is like soft on the details because it shouldn't matter.
Right.
I think it's a hard thing to call. Really, I was just thinking like we ought to get Nick Bentley back on the show because I believe he would have had some experience writing rule books, or someone else maybe, but like someone who has rulebook writing experience, because this is like a whole, I think, content meat and potatoes moment that we could get into.
Let me get my chalkboard eraser. I'm going to erase that 7 and put a 0. 0 days since Nick Bentley has been mentioned on the podcast.
There you go.
Okay. And now we can continue. That was Dream Home from 2016.
Well, we haven't even talked about the game yet. Okay, so taking it all the way back to Dream Home, but my point is, like, I could talk more about bad rule books. I have a lot of thoughts, but you know what? I'm going to save that for its own episode. Anyway, all of that said, Dream Home does not have a bad rule book, ironically. It's generally pretty
why were you talking
consistent
about this then?
Oh, because I didn't want to read the rules, because I just assumed the rule book would leave me frustrated. That was the problem.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Is that like you feeling that way about all rule books, or you saw the game Dream Home and you're just like, this rule book's going to suck?
I think it's a little of both. I think I was unfairly judging Dream Home by its cover and assumed the rule book was going to be like Swiss cheese at best, but it wasn't. It's very concise. It's a pretty simple game. It's a straight up like tile drafting game of a sort. The tiles that you are drafting, of course, are like tiny Ticket to Ride size cards, but ultimately they function like tiles. They never are held in your hand. You're playing them out on your house, and you're trying to build your house from the ground floor up, maximizing all of the different scoring patterns, kind of like Castles of Mad King Ludwig a little bit. I was pleasantly surprised, I guess, with the level of complexity, the amount of thought you could put into the decision points that Dream Home has to offer, even in a straight up 2-player game. And it might even almost be best at 2-player for the same reason as a lot of other games in my mind. You just don't have to worry about what everyone is doing, and so your AP can focus entirely on the other player, if you're somebody that worries way too much about winning like I do.
In a space where there's a lot of these other kind of like chill, you get a bunch of points for your own board kind of games, I would even lump in like roll and writes. How do you think this stands up to those? Yeah,
if we tier listed all the cozy simultaneous solo games, shall we say, or some category for this, you're thinking of things like Calico, Verdant, I assume, shit like that.
Yeah, even like Karubo that we played recently, where like the only decision is like either picking something in the middle or racing to get a thing done.
Right. This is, I think, in the upper echelon of those. One, because it's short, and I think even you admitted, if a roll and write is short and sweet, that is great. If it's a roll and write that takes like 2 hours to play, it's not getting to the table as much. So yeah, Dream Home's quick and sweet and simple. It really just doesn't like, it really condenses the mechanics to their finer points, and I think just executes it maybe even flawlessly. I might go so far as to say, maybe that's too much. I'm not saying it's going to blow you away. It's like if I tier listed it, it might be in the A, maybe the high B tier of all of those types of games, but I like it a lot more than a lot of these other games where you're just scoring on your own board and not necessarily having a direct interaction.
Yeah.
There is an almost I split you choosy aspect to the drafting portion of the tiles that you're picking, which is really funny when you think about it thematically. Like two people go like they want the same bathtub, or something at Home Depot, and they're
Give me
just
that.
like, yeah. That's Dream Home from 2016.
100 games to play before you die.
Okay, Kenny, game number 24 on your epic list of the 100 games you need to play before you turn 100 years old. For those of you who are new to the podcast, you might not know, this is the segment where we talk about the list of games that Kenny made up that cover the wide, wonderful, wacky world of board gaming. And number 24 on this list is Azul from 2017. Kenny, what the hell is Azul? Why is this on the list?
Michael Kiesling, published by Next Move Games. Azul is on the list for a number of reasons. One, it is an evergreen game, and we're going to start seeing this a little bit more on the list. These are games that, like, if you asked anybody, what do I play when I first get into board games? It's going to be one of the ones that they list, your Settlers of Catan kind of games. I think Azul has cemented itself in that category. They are either so unique that they don't represent a category, or they're somewhat samey to other things on the category, but it felt weird to not include them. Azul, I guess, is tile laying / drafting / this minimalist abstract. It's more of like a family abstract. That's just one aspect of it that makes it appear. The other thing that we're going to see more and more is designers. So it was important for me to showcase some really iconic designers and represent the works that they have, or at least a work of theirs, if possible. And Michael Kiesling, it's impossible to have a lot of the games in the hobby without him. I mean, he's been very influential on a lot of different things that have happened, both as far as the games themselves and the community surrounding them. He's collaborated quite a bit with Wolfgang Kramer, who's also on the list. Michael Kiesling, very influential and definitely one of his most recognized games. I don't think we need to go into Azul, draft tiles in the middle, and arrange them in a way to get as many points as possible. It's a very, very elegant and rewarding game. My mom likes it. And it's pretty. I'd say the one downside that it has going for it is that the pieces are very hard to pass through your system. So try not to swallow too many of them because, while it's pleasurable when it goes in, it's not as fun when it comes out. And that's my review of Azul.
Yeah, I think it's really funny that they came out with like a chocolate edition. I guess they recognized that everybody kept saying they wanted to eat the pieces because they look like Starburst.
Yeah, they're really trying to get a lawsuit. They're like, let's make a chocolate version.
It's really funny because Helena has a copy of this where someone must have set like a chair down on the piece or something because it has like this big dent in it. And when I first saw it, I was just like, did someone actually try to take a bite? And then she was like, there's no fucking way that someone bit that and the piece is what got damaged, And I was like,
for sure. Yeah.
I was like, well, if the thing bit it, there's my Marvel Champions reference for y'all.
Yeah. Apparently the thing has feeling, can feel pain.
Oh, he has nerves or something.
Was that called nociception? Anyway.
Sure.
That was Azul.
That's a fun little fact for y'all. Think about that for the next week. Okay, well, enough of that bullshit. Time to get into the real meat and potatoes of this podcast. The stuff that people keep coming back for, Kenny. The part of the episode that they want to listen to. They don't really care about the games we've been playing recently. They don't care about these 100 games they have to play before you die. They don't even care that I didn't even mention Jimmy Carter this time for once.
They do care about the thing, though. They were waiting for the thing update.
They are passionately excited for that, and they always want to hear more about Nick Bentley. But at the end of the day, they're really, really just here for the main topic of our episode, and that's this week. It's how to pick what to play at your regular game night. I don't know how long this segment can really be because I think you and I have both well-established systems, and more than anything, we just wanted to share them maybe with the rest of the world so that if you aren't already employing a similar system for your own group, you can try one of these out and maybe get a few more games in on your regular nights. I have noticed, though, I feel like we're running into a bit of an issue lately where we get a lot of people who are willing to more just kind of like just hang out for an indefinite amount of time.
It really pisses me off when people like want to talk about their feelings and have a good time and just like bond. And I'm just like, I just want to play board games. Just shut up. Let me play board games.
Do you think there's like a bit of an aspect to it? Like people who have kids, people who don't have kids, where it's like people who don't have kids, you know, they're not on a time crunch.
Let's just talk about our feelings, you know? Yeah. Just like, I already have my life figured out. We're just
here to like hang out.
No,
like,
I'm joking, yes. But like every joke has a little bit of truth behind it. Like I do feel like sometimes I don't want to be the person, you know, but I end up like being like, so do we want to get something out? Do we want to play something, you know? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's the first thing.
I think
stop talking and pick a game, or at least start to talk about what you're going to play.
And especially if you have a group where anyone in the group like has kids or an early bedtime or both, it's like, we're here to fucking game. Okay, sorry. Like we can yap in between turns, but we need to at least be getting this shit set up because it takes forever sometimes to get these things out and cooking, you know? We yap mid-game, ideally.
Ideally not on your turn.
Yeah. Complete your turn actions and then start whatever the topic is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, by all means, I would love to hear about your problems. Just not on your turn and not before we start playing.
We're gonna get in so much trouble for this one.
Yeah. Okay. Next game night, everybody instantly, okay, what are we playing?
No, they're gonna do knowing our group, they're gonna roll up and be like, they're gonna be completely ready to yap. They won't even have brought any games with them. They'll just be like,
holy shit, you know, what have we done?
You guys are the game picksters. We're just here to do the yapping.
Just so everybody knows the service that we're doing to the community and to the world, we are sacrificing our game nights because after every episode, without fail, the rest of our game group just trolls us about anything. Like whether it's an opinion we made or like a piece of advice that we did, they literally do the opposite just to get like a kick out of us. So you're welcome, I guess. Because this is another one. Like we got to start doing the like reverse psychology, Tom. We got to be like, you know what I hate? When people gift me really expensive, hard to find games. I hate that. And then they'll be like, hey, this will show him, you know?
Got him. New and shrink copy of Glory to Rome. Take that, Kenny.
Hey, do you got a system that you go to?
Yeah, well, so the system that I have personally found the most success with is what I call the reverse draft. So you count how many people you currently have who are ready to play a game, which ideally is no more than 4. If you have 6 people, you're either playing a really light game or you're playing Eclipse specifically. We like to split 5s even into 3 and 2. Find out your players. So if you have 3 or 4, you have one person pick 4 games that fit kind of the vibes, right? Whoever has like the capability that day of making the picks. They pick 4 games, and then starting with some other random person, they just have to pick one that they don't want to play. Because for whatever reason, that's like a lot easier to do than trying to get like 4 people to pick one game they do want to play. It seems like it's way easier to just get like people to pick one out of X games that they don't want and knock it down. And then you're left with the game that everyone on some level was okay with playing.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I don't know if I picked this up from you or someone else, but I know that you and I both do this. Yeah.
Yeah, pick 4, and then starting with someone else is like they knock one out, they knock one out, they knock one out.
Next person knocks one out, the next person knocks another one out, and then whoever's last picks between the 2. It's just so elegant because it absolves people from having to decide while also making them not upset too much with whatever ends up being there. Worst case scenario, it's not their first pick, but it's still something they're willing to play. So problem solved. Let's wrap this episode up.
Bam, there you go. That's how you pick the game.
I guess we can talk about other systems, but like really that is the one like
this is the one that we personally like. It's just proven time and time again to work really well at
Yeah.
quickly getting something to actually get decided on and get started.
Yeah. You have the multi-vote on here.
I'll just get into that now. So this is a system, I've had it work out sometimes, but I just feel like it's just not as efficient as it sounds on paper. This comes from a really old video from CGP Grey, where he talked about different voting systems and a way you can implement like group voting to determine what the most popular option is in a group. Let's say you have 6 people. 4 of them are interested in something like Food Chain Magnate. 2 of them are interested in Monopoly Deal.
1 is wearing a green shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
The one wearing the yellow shirt is next to the one with the green shirt.
But all 6 of them want to play a game together. All 6 of them would be interested in playing Eclipse, right? So hear me out. The way you would figure out what game works for this group is this multiple votes for every person system, where like you still need to, I guess, pare down the nominees so you only have like...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think our audience is dumb. I think you can jump to the... Like, people know what you mean when you're talking about the multi-vote system.
No, they don't. How would they know about this? I mean, unless they came across this before.
Yeah,
I never came across
You can
this
vote for
before.
multiple games. Who wants to play this one? People raise their hands. Who wants to play this one? People raise their hands. They get multiple votes. Sometimes they can just vote as many times as they want. Sometimes...
Well, I'm not explaining how it works.
Number.
I'm explaining the theory behind it, right? It's like the theory is that originally it's like vegetarians, people who could eat anything, and people that would love to eat meat or only eat meat. It's like if it was just like popular vote, we'd all be going to Arby's. But if it was like multi-vote system, we'd be going somewhere like Wendy's where they have good salads. And that's because like the vegetarians' votes would get counted if the vegetarians were the minority in this group setting, right? And the same principle, I guess, applies to board games. You know, you have like people that want to play lighter fare. You have people that want to play heavier fare. You're trying to get a game that pleases everyone to the table. This is a system that could work, right? You still need somebody to nominate the main titles, though.
I've tried this system before, especially when you're getting 2 games going at the same time. And what I've experienced time and time again is that the majority of people just end up raising their hands for everything. And then it's just like, what are we doing? I think that's why the reverse draft is so much more effective. Also, this takes way longer. And there's always people who are like, oh, we were voting for that one. I meant to raise my hand and I didn't.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, it takes forever. It's the same thing. Yeah.
There's so much room for error in this system.
Yeah.
Like
there's always the one person who's like, I'm down for everything, and just keeps their hand up the whole time. And there's another person who's like, I only want to play 2 games. And then the person who only wants to play 2 games ends up deciding what we play because everyone else like roughly votes for more than half of them. And it's just like, yeah, this whole thing is just like a waste of time.
This really doesn't seem to work in a board games setting. I don't know if this works more in like fast food or something else. But for whatever reason, like when I saw the CGP Grey video, I was just like, oh, this is a great system. You know, I'm going to implement this all the time. And literally exactly what you're saying. Every time I've actually tried to apply it in practice, I'm just like, democracy is a joke. Yeah. I just like become the Joker. Yeah. It's crazy like how much this like doesn't work in real life.
Yeah, for some reason it just doesn't gel with board games.
I think it probably has a lot to do with like lack of decisiveness from people, because like, especially with our group, you know, we have a lot of people that they'll be down for just about anything. They just don't seem typically to want to be the person to make the choice, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it leaves the highly determined people that always want to play the latest Cole Worley game that they managed to buy secondhand, you know who you are, to be the person that gets to pick.
All of this is a non-issue if you have somebody who really wants to play a game, and either that person can empathize well with the people that are sitting at the table, or the people who decide to sit at the table with them know what they're getting into. If we're using the Cole Worley example, if everybody knows what they're getting into, then it's totally cool for somebody to come with a game and be like, I really want to play this. Who wants to play this? But if there's somebody who's sitting down who's like, Root, what's that? Is it like Cards Against Humanity? Then we have a problem. It's the responsibility of the person proposing the game and the others at the table to be like, hold on, are you sure you want to do this? But otherwise, I think this is actually a good system. I know this is sometimes frowned upon, like just come with the game you want to play. But like it kind of works, honestly. That's what happens on Wednesday a lot.
You call this the steamroll system?
Yeah, but it's like it's a lot better than the voting, and it's a lot better than not having a system.
I'm not sure that it's better than a reverse draft, but no,
it's not like, better than reverse draft. Reverse draft is ideal, but especially with a large group, because with a large group, if you don't want to play that, there's always another game going on. So I think especially if you're going to game night, it's totally fine to like be like, I would love to play this. If nobody wants to play it, that's fine. But this is what I want to play. And you shouldn't feel guilty about doing that.
Yeah. Honestly, be that person because...
Yeah, there's probably people thanking you.
It probably happens more often that you have chuds like us rolling up that are like, I'm down for whatever, as long as it's content worthy for the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, so as long as your game's from before 2020 or 2020 or earlier for us, just be adamant, steamroll it.
Yeah, I feel like you and I often end up being the ones who pick games, but like to be perfectly transparent, we'd be super down to play whatever. So,
yeah, I mean, I personally need to get a little better at being willing to learn new rules to games.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think you're okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
You know what's even better than steamrolling? It's if you come with 2 games and you're like, I want to play one of these 2. So then there's like, it's narrow enough that they can actually pick, but then they're not forced to play the one that like, you're like, this is the one we're playing. That's very close to reverse draft there. I still think reverse draft is S tier. And then steamroll duo is A tier.
It's a funny story too. Just recently at the last game night we had, I like initiated a reverse draft between myself and 2 other people. And then literally as we narrowed down at the pick to, I think it was Love Letter, I was like, actually, you know what? Cat in the Box. Nick, can you grab that? And I switched it up at literally the last second and like, jumped into the steamroll system. And the reason I did that was because like there was like very low enthusiasm for what we had narrowed it down to. We needed a filler game, and Cat in the Box I just knew like would work perfectly, and that the one player who'd played it before would be down, and the new player would probably really like it. And my intuition was correct. The new guy was like really into it. I was really proud about that moment. Maybe I got lucky. It doesn't necessarily work every time. But sometimes, like, you can just gut check it like that, and I think it can work out. If you're watching, is like everyone just goes like, "Here we go again, Love Letter." You just be like, you know what though, if that inspiration hits, just go for it. There is one other idea I want to talk about, which is like when you have a really large group. So you're talking about 8+ people, so that you're breaking out into 2 groups of 4. I like doing this, and maybe this doesn't work out too often, but you basically just on vibes, like, who's got the most opinion tonight, most energy to be willing to teach. You pick those 2 people, and then you have them pick their game. They just pick one game. Once those 2 people can pick the game, they basically just like dodgeball draft the other 6 people.
I think with the very strict requirement that people are indecisive.
Yes, this has to come like when nobody has an opinion. When you get that moment where you're just like, all right, guys, what do we want to play? And everyone's like, I don't know. I brought this today, but we don't have to play it. I don't know. I don't care. And we get this a lot.
I literally impersonation. Yeah.
I literally hear like, I literally don't care. When people are saying that, that's when you break this system out. And obviously, like in the dodgeball scenario, you're gonna, as soon as like the games are picked, I think you're gonna get people who are like, their eyes are lighting up at one idea over the other. And so, you can kind of allow people to draft themselves into the game they want to play. Yeah. But for all the
for all those left over, and make it very clear that the reason they're being drafted is because they're the coolest.
They have like the most swag for literally being willing to play any game you force upon them.
One thing that we didn't touch on is like how you nominate the games initially. For me, it's like anything that anyone mentions, plus things that I think the people in front of me might enjoy. I might steer closer to like things I've been meaning to play, but only if I feel like it would gel with the group.
I feel like my first metric for picking a game is really like how much time do we got?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Am I looking to play like to maximize the number of games I play tonight? Am I looking to just maximize the sort of like the depth of the game that I get to play tonight? I like to try and get like a little bit of a rotation in after the first game if we're looking at a more than one game situation. So if we're like, okay, 30 minutes before the other group is like finally done, we're going to try and pick a 30-minute title, blah, 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 right?
I like when all four of us finish a game before you. We just kind of like sit all facing the same direction towards a wall, like NPC style. Try to not move or breathe as much as possible until you're done with your game, and then we start moving again.
You all just like single file follow each other down the stairs in T poses and then line up and then turn in sync toward the wall and then like lower the T pose and just stand there Blair Witch style in the corner until the game's done.
Exactly. And I mean, we animate as soon as you're over. But
of course, yeah.
That's the way to store energy, is what I've been told.
It works.
So that's it. I feel like it was short and sweet, but like, why?
Because I went on a huge tangent in the middle of the games.
Well, that too, but like, why explore all these other Garbo systems when we already got it all figured out,
Yeah, you don't need anything else from this. You know what? If we missed something, if you felt like, how the fuck did they not talk about this? Then leave a comment, especially on YouTube. It helps us a lot.
We should mention Nick's thing, shouldn't we?
What's that?
Nick was like, oh, make sure you talk about the game to pick a game. There's a game to pick a game by Chip Theory. But that's it. All right, we mentioned it.
I haven't played it, so I don't know if it works.
Neither.
You know what? I think that's just going to do it for this week's podcast. Keep it short, nice, tight little episode for you all. There was no tangents whatsoever. Thank you so much for listening to this. Exactly. We really appreciate you all. Thank you especially to Michael, Tyler, and Devon, and Josh of the Boise RainBeaus for your awesome segue music. And thank you to Bonehouse for letting us use your song Rot as our opening theme. This is the last time we're going to say it. We're going to be at SaltCon this fucking Saturday. So the week that this comes out, that's Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. If you just so happen to be listening to it that day and you haven't already bought your tickets to go to a board game convention in Salt Lake City, Utah, I'm sorry to tell you, it's required. You
could
have
be
to go
listening
online
to this episode on Tuesday and then fall asleep to our voices and then wake up on Wednesday morning and we're in your bed staring at you. We're like hovering over you, like the two behemoths that we are.
Yeah, if your bed happens to be in the hotel that the convention.
Well, I'm just assuming that all our fans are like driving down right now. So
the show itself for us is going to be on March 1st at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And that's part of SaltCon. You do need SaltCon tickets to get into the show, as I understand it. But there's no extra fees beyond that. If you want to go to the convention itself, that's February 27th until Sunday, March 2nd. We're going to be there the whole time. We're going to make sure to get a selfie on Blue Sky or something so people know what the hell we look like and can track us down.
Yeah, also post Tom's cell phone and social security number in the show notes. That way you can reach out to him.
But anyway, come check us out. We'd love to play games with you. And if you are listening to this after the fact, tough luck. Sorry you missed it. We'll see you next year.
We're also going to be at a Tree Fort in March. That's going to be Friday, March 28th at 3 p.m. Mountain. We're going to be playing in the Boise Contemporary Theater. You do not need a Tree Fort wristband. It's all ages and you can just walk in. Hope to see you there.
So all ages are really going to have to curb my enthusiasm for that episode.
Mm-hmm. If you're loving the cast, share it with a friend or on Reddit or on BGG. It's the best thing you can do to help us grow.
Leave a comment on YouTube or a thumbs up on any of our videos. We're on YouTube, basically through the YouTube Music app. It's the same database as YouTube. So you can watch the videos on YouTube or you can listen to them on YouTube Music. And either way, you can leave comments and thumbs. And those do wonders for us. We like seeing the growth on there too.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, send an email to shelfstablecast@gmail.com. All of this and more available in the show notes. Thomas, next week, we know what we're doing. We're at the con. And so our topic, drum roll, is how to get the most out of your gaming convention.
Yeah.
Well, first, you definitely want to attend any cool podcast shows that are happening. So,
yes, you should definitely come to our show and not any of the other really interesting events that are happening at the same time.
Bye.
See ya.